Hi, welcome everyone. For the ones of you who don't know me yet, my name is Zucconi. I'm a lecturer in artificial intelligence and a science communicator. And if this is your first time watching the show, well, a warm welcome to Gamedev Graveyard. Now, this is the weekly show where we talk about unfinished projects and games that didn't make it, prototypes that never got released, postmortems, and maybe today even a project that somehow got resurrected. Hi Tim. Now, as you probably know, I think you know that we should start these episodes by addressing the fact that a lot is actually going on around the world during these days, and I think that some people might not think that doing a live show like this might be appropriate. I have a slightly different perspective on this, and I think that we all have a very strong responsibility to stay updated and know what's happening around the world. But at the same time, I think that people also have the right to look after, their own mental health. And I know that keeping up with everything that's happening can be really triggering and really traumatic and really stressful for a lot of people. And I think this is exactly why we desperately need some light content sometimes. So if this is what you need, if you need, 1 hour where we just talks about game, then I think that this could be exactly that. So for the next 60 minutes or so, we will just talk about nice games. So if you need a peace of mind, hopefully this will able to help. So if that's if you need a break, please stay with us, and hopefully we will be able to do that. Now, I'm quite excited today, not just because of the guest that we have, but also because of the game that hopefully we will be able to show you, a bit later. Now, the guest we have today is Sam Reed. He's an indie game developer and producer. He's based here in the UK, and he has worked on a variety of different games and different projects, including the BAFTA-nominated Gang Beast, Mainlining and Dream. Not Dreams, but Dream. So just avoid any confusion. And if that's not enough, in 2014, Sam was also nominated one of Develop 30 Under 30. And I believe it was the same year when I was nominated as well. So I think we're 30 Under 30 buddies, probably. Now, with that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce you, Sam. So, hi, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It was a good introduction because I feel, there's a lot going on at the minute, and I'm sort of stressed out. So knowing that we're just going to talk about games for just 1 hour, is going to be a nice break.
We should talk for games about much longer, I guess. But
got stuff to do. Okay, so I guess then with that was a really nice introduction. Where did you want to start with it all?
So, do you want to introduce yourself a bit? Do you want to say what you're working on now, what you're doing now? Did I miss something?
No. That was a glowing review. I don't think you missed anything. So I guess hi, I'm Sam. Not to sort of re-go over what Alan said, but I've been working in games for about 6-7 years. Currently, I'm teaching and making games. And I think it'll be good to talk about that a bit later. Definitely the biggest thing I've sort of worked with and on by far is Gang Beasts. So I guess that's probably quite a good place to start.
Definitely. What was your role on Gang Beasts? What was your experience with Gang Beasts?
So it was really odd. So first of all, Bone Loaf, the team behind Gang Beasts, those guys are all fantastic. And really, it came about through me meeting them and just getting on with them so well. I know a lot of people say that you have to be in the right place and the right time for Gang Beasts. I definitely was, but for that, I always like to think you make your own luck. So with Gang Beasts, it was really odd actually. There was a talk at the building I worked at. So it was an office building, and it's where me and two guys ran a company called Hypersloth, which I'm sure we'll sort of get onto in a bit. But in that building, Yuki came up to do a talk about games, and because it was up north in Huddersfield, A lot of game stuff goes on up north, but usually Huddersfield gets a bit looked over because next door's Leeds and Manchester and York. So Yuki came up, and they had like a list of everyone who was going to be there. No, these weren't necessarily like big devs; they were just literally the general public who were showing up. And I literally knew everyone on the list apart from the Brown brothers, and it sort of stood out because you have Brown and Brown and Brown. So then I sort of did a bit of googling and thought I'd find out what they were working on because I didn't know who they were. And then I came across a YouTube video, which apparently was unlisted. I don't have a clue how I found it, but it was this trailer for Gang Beasts. So it had never been announced. No one had seen it before. And it looked awesome. Like I was sort of seeing it, obviously with fresh eyes, how people do with these jelly babies fighting. And then I found out they were going to be at an event called Game Republic, which was in Middlesbrough. So when I was there, I sort of was talking to the organisers and made sure I got an introduction so I could go see them. And then basically just said to them, look, have you got the game on you? Like, you know, you should always have it on you. And they did have it on a laptop. And there was a bug in it where basically the level was invisible. So then at that point, I was just like, no, I've got to play this game. I've seen it. I really want to get into it. So I opened up the laptop. We played one round of it. And instantly there was about 40, 50 people just surrounding us and sort of crowding it. So then obviously I just sort of handed it off and said, oh, yeah, these guys need to play. But then through chatting to them, they'd never made games before. One of the brothers had just graduated university in games design. And I just sort of come off the back of finishing up a project which we'd had funding for and everything. So, really, I just helped them get started. And sort of there were different bits throughout, but yeah, really it was, in the early days, it was much more production and funding stuff. So I helped them fund the game as well.
So the question is, are you good at Gang Beasts?
No. I was definitely in the camp of however esports it gets and however sort of intricate it gets with controls and character controllers and everything. I don't believe that anyone can be good at Gang Beasts. I think it's a fallacy. I think it's just all jelly baby madness.
Maybe that's the actual thing, that you can't be good at Gang Beasts. I think it's a bit like Surgeon Simulator, like those kind of floppy physics game where it's the fact that you're bad at it that makes it good, I guess.
And I think that is actually one of the reasons it's so popular, is because it's like a great cross between a party game. I'm really sorry if you can hear rustling. My dog is going nuts in his bed.
We're very pet friendly on the show, so.
Okay. Well, he should settle down. There we go. He's dropped. He's fine. Right. So, I think one of the things what makes Gang Beasts really successful is that it is almost that sort of fun silliness of a party game where adults can play with children, whether it's at a show or it's at a party, and enjoy it just as much. Or if you want to get really good, then again, I don't know if I necessarily believe it, but you can get really good, and you can see sort of these extra techniques where you can climb around and do this stuff which you wouldn't know how to do if you literally just picked up the controller. So it has that great, easy to pick up, hard to master.
It's quite tricky because like I'm a really bad player. This is something that a lot of people don't think is, but because you're a developer. No, you don't understand. I'm terrible at playing games, especially competitive games. I'm really, really bad. So in a way, playing stuff like Gang Beast, makes me feel much better because I'm like, well, everybody's bad at Gang Beast, so I don't have to be so embarrassed, about not being able to.
Yeah, That's definitely the camp I sit in. Like, I'm a big fan of negative feedback loops. So, like in not Smash Bros, like in Mario Kart, where sort of the person at the back is always getting the better items to bring everyone together. I much prefer those kinds of, I guess, in air quotes, fun games. Like I'm not the Dark Souls guy.
No. I wouldn't.
I'm definitely the party guy.
Wouldn't even try to play Dark Souls. Like as soon as I see it, I'm like, no. That's not a game for me. I recently played Below, and I loved I love the aesthetic, I love the style, I love the music, I love everything. I hate how hard it was. Like I was struggling.
Okay.
Yeah, I was struggling so much between like me wanting to love the game, but the game not wanting me to survive. And I was quite upset when the exploration mode. It's not about exploring. like you can still die. So I was hoping
Right.
they got rid of all the enemies because that's how I like to play the games, in sort of easy mode.
Saying that, I felt quite similar about Super Time Force. I love the Super Time Force aesthetic. All the abilities are really cool, characters are really cool, but it just kept kicking my ass. Like I just couldn't get through.
I think
But yeah, I am a big fan of
I
capping.
think it gets to the point where it's not fun anymore. Like it gets like I rage quit and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it's not. Rage quitting is not fun. It's not. I mean, for me, it's not fun. I don't know. Some people might love it, but so we actually got a question from Team. Hi again. Say, do you think comedy in games is more effective when generated through mechanics or a funny script?
So I don't know. I would probably side with mechanics. But there's definitely one that I don't think there's enough comedy games. So it's one of those things where to try and sort of pin that down into what is funnier, really, you're not looking at these broad groups of games. You're looking at very specific things. And then obviously comedy is so subjective anyway. Like someone just may not find physical comedy funny, and someone may find scripted stuff sort of much more their bag. So, and really, one of the first games I started, I guess, when I started playing games, one of the first games I absolutely loved was Simon the Sorcerer, mainly the second one. But if you haven't played it, it's a point and click sort of narrative adventure. It's almost like a grown up Shrek, like the comedy is just a bit more sarcastic and I don't know. I don't actually know if they do swear. I don't think they probably do, but it's definitely like a more grown up language. But it's about this sort of fantasy world. And in that, they do have some physical humour, but obviously, even those scenes are all these scripted, like pixel art animations and things going on. But I thought that was hilarious. And then, ages later, playing like the Telltale Sam and Max, I love those games. So I definitely think scripted stuff can be funny. In fact, actually, Frog Detective. Frog Detective, I think, is fantastic, and it's just a very different style of comedy, just in itself, let alone sort of in a video game. But then when you've got stuff like Gang Beasts, Human Fall Flat, it's that I think it's probably because you're not expecting it, and it just sort of it's almost that glitch comedy. So say when you're playing like a game of GTA or Call of Duty, and someone suddenly flies off, or like like cars like prang out. It's funny because it's sort of broken, and you're sort of looking down on it, but it just sort of is what it is. I feel like things like Surgeon Simulator and Goat Simulator, like just harness that. So yeah, so it's something that I'm working on at the minute. Actually, hopefully, will bring those two worlds together. But I don't think it's as cut and dry as saying one's better than the other. I think it's all down to personal preference.
It's quite interesting. Now, personally, I, maybe it's because, English is not my first language. I think that the problem with a script is that he might not necessarily translate very well. It's not that universal. Even
Yeah,
the things that might be funny in a language or in a culture might not be funny in another one. I'm thinking about British comedy that is notoriously hermetic to other countries. At least that's a
yeah.
perception that a lot of Europeans have. And
So
well, I think that if you go
yeah,
through again mechanics, that might be more universal. For example, like Gang Beast doesn't even need script to be funny. I guess it's the interaction that makes it funny. So you save on localization if that.
well, so something actually what does I think both these things quite well is I'm losing it now. Untitled Goose Game. I definitely should remember the title of that. But yeah, so Untitled Goose Game, obviously, it's scripted in the way that this is your challenge, you have to do this. And this, in effect, that event is sort of scripted in the way that you go over and you press this button, and it's sort of like the same thing happens every time. But because you have this playground to operate in, and because you're doing everything through interactions, not through like dialogue trees, I think that has like a really nice balance between the two.
I think it definitely works. Now, if correct me if I'm wrong, you also because now that they mention it, you also work on something that was sort of funny, comical, comedy related, right?
Yeah, so this is something that really I was making it as a like a game jam game over sort of one of the holidays which has been passed. Really, it's been sort of in lockdown, and I was thinking that okay, well, I've got like a week or so that I can just jam this and mess around with it. But I am definitely going to carry on with it because I think it's like a project which can feasibly be like 3 or 4 months long.
We
It's
have
not
it on
like it's
screen
sort of
now.
just
Do you want to say something about how it works?
yeah. So it's called Do No Evil. Basically, you play as these three monkeys who are in a trench coat pretending to be an adult. And that I don't know if it is universal, but I feel like that's probably like a universal joke. It's like sort of these three kids trying to be on each other's shoulders and pretend to be adult. And I wanted to try and marry these two things up. So the way you walk in the game is with the shoulder buttons. So when you press the shoulder buttons, you probably can't see my body, but you sort of swing round. So then you're sort of taking these steps, and then your arms are controlled by the triggers. But when you sort of go to grab things, they just sort of bring in. So at that point, you sort of don't have control, and that sort of brings in, I guess, sort of like the gang beast silliness walking, and the surgeon simulator can't control what you're doing, so sort of you're doing things wrong. But then also because it is narrative driven, it'll be a short game, but it is narrative driven. So you're trying to basically get tickets to go into this movie theater. You do have to talk to people. You do have to do actions, and sort of you get a job in a bar, so you have to take people drinks. But obviously, you can't walk and hold things at the best of times, so a wait is pretty hard. But yeah, I am sort of not that far into development yet. I feel like all the tools and all the actual construction of it's there. The script is basically written, but one of the things, um, looking and watching talks about Frog Detective, what took the most time was actually playtesting. Because when you've got a game and you playtest, okay, you can do design testing to see if it um, sort of works how it should work, see if it's fun, see what people like about it and don't like about it, and then obviously you've got QA to check if it technically works. But with comedy, it's one of those things where you're thinking about like timing and if it's subjective and does that joke land and does it land differently to different audiences. And it's obviously being in lockdown isn't the best for QA anyway. Um, so really, I sort of just have to go all in and make a vertical slice. So I can't just sort of test bits here and there like I would like to, like I usually would. I need to play like a good 10-minute chunk, which people can get their hands on, and then start testing. So I'm sort of really looking forward to doing more with it. But at the minute, it's more than a glorified prototype, but I haven't actually been able to see if it's funny yet. So
I think watching the video, I can see that it looks very polished. Like it doesn't look like a prototype. Because if I had to
oh
prototype
wow,
these, it
okay,
would all be boxes, literal like spheres on top of each other. Instead, it seems that you have the effects, you have the color scheme that is really nice. You have the mechanics, of course. I know it's a trailer, so I'm sure it's only the best bits, right? But you also have like
uh,
the rewinding effects and
yeah.
stuff. So I feel that for to be a prototype, this is actually a good prototype. I feel it's in a good
So
state.
okay, so that okay, that's actually really good to hear. Like I said, that probably took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. I think one thing what really helps is actually if you look, say you were to rewind it or watch it again, a lot of the characters apart from their heads, obviously are just like boxes and sticks. But the color palette, I've seen so many people. I can't think of his name now. The guy who makes Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. Um, but his name's gone. But he shares a load of really great gifs of projects he's making and game jams and prototypes. So definitely look him up. But his color palette, he uses Unity, but he does a lot of like flat color or like not very detailed things. But then has like nice shaders which just have that like gradient of color on. And they just always look so nice. I wanted to really remake that. So a lot of the time, to be honest, was remaking some very basic shaders will do that. So when I just shove in art, hopefully it will look nicer because I'm not really an artist. I'm definitely not a 3D artist.
When you talk about shaders and making stuff look good with code, I think we're on the same line because I'm really bad as well. But
So,
it's a different skill, I guess. A lot of people that do 3D modeling, they don't have the shader skills, I guess. So
so I don't know if I'd say that I have the shader skills. I think I know how to polish a turd, but I think that's more like I just know how to make something really basic look passable.
And I think that that's the best skill possible because then you take everything
Okay.
and you make it looks good. And I think even with my students, sometimes it happens that they submit something that is technically well done, that technically works, but it's like,
Yeah.
guys, please, it's a prototype. you don't use the Unity blue color. Don't use the Unity blue.
Okay, yeah, so that really aggravates me. The second I see the Unity skyline and the Unreal skyline, is in theory just as bad, but it just looks a bit nicer. I hate that Unity skyline.
But
It's
that's the thing.
horrid.
Like all the for the ones that are watching, basically, when you and they haven't worked in games, when you work in Unity, there's a default setting for the sky basically, and it's a normal blue sky. Nothing amazing. But the problem is that all the lazy games that don't even bother changing that skybox color have that. So it's a stamp.
Yeah,
It's a stamp of like 101 Unity tutorial not finished. And I'm like, if I see the 2D skybox or the 3D skybox in a game, it's minus 15 points. Because it's
yeah. I'm really happy actually you said that. I feel like it's probably something that a lot of people notice and stuff, but sometimes when I say that to people, I feel like I'm coming across as just sort of like this cold, heartless person. Like they've obviously put loads of time and effort into a game, and it's got the blue skybox. But that's sort of, I guess, mine and your point is that if you're going to make this thing, present it well,
no,
like change the skybox.
and it's true, and it's not. If you say, oh, you have to do this game with high poly models and 8K textures, I'm like, okay, maybe this takes months of work. But if it's literally just changing the skybox, it's
Oh yeah, no, it takes like a literal 5 seconds. But yeah,
exactly. That's why I'm sort of not demanding it, but I'm like, please, guys, make sure that the default settings are not there, so your game doesn't look a Unity game. Not because it's a bad thing if something is made in Unity, which is not. I mean, I'm using Unity, so, but I think because Unity is so accessible, a lot of developers that maybe are not very skilled, or they just started, or they have no experience yet, they use it to make stuff that it's not professional. Let's go with that. There are a lot of bad
so
games.
the thing is now they're saying this. What's really funny. So for while I was working on Gang Beast, I did my university dissertation, and my dissertation was about tutorial systems. And
Really
in it,
nice.
I made like a tutorial system for Gang Beasts. So it was really just like to teach people how to run around and pick stuff up, and it was sort of like a like Gladiator, like the old '80s show where you sort of go through and like push through all these barrels and stuff. But that was a university dissertation with Gang Beasts, and I think because I was just prototyping levels, I think it did actually have the blue sky, and it's only just hit me now. I might have to go away and find it.
I think your degree should be removed now. We should get
Oh,
in
oh yeah,
touch.
no.
We should totally
Yeah,
get in
no,
touch with
definitely
your
should.
with your college and tell them. Now,
Uh,
there's some of the projects you worked on that I think are quite interesting. So one is Dream. Do you want to talk a bit about Dream and how it came to be and whatnot?
yes, so Dream really it started off and was fully made when I was at university, but it took around 4 years to complete. So when we started it, me and sort of two friends, colleagues, Lewis Bibby and Ash Stansel, we decided to take a year out. It was sort of a sandwich year, so we actually were doing a business course at the time, but that was around a half a day a week or something like that. So we were making the game while doing that, and it worked really well actually. For it definitely had ups and downs when it came to funding, because we were working flat out for about 6 months, and because we're students, we didn't have kids, we didn't have mortgages, we didn't have any of this and that. So it's I always sort of think it's a good time to fail, like fail fast and fail quick, and then you learn from it, and then you can sort of get better next time. But we're doing that for about 6 months, and went to Eurogamer to show the game, and this was really when indie games were at Eurogamer in the Resd booth, so it was before the event Resd was a thing, and it's just an area at EGX, and there was about, I want to say, like 10, 16 games there, so it was sort of a much smaller thing where now you'd have literally hundreds of games. And we showed had a Kickstarter going, Kickstarter failed, and we're sort of all ready to pack up and do some like work for hire and bits like that. But at EGX, Mastertronic saw the game. When they saw the Kickstarter fail, they sort of got in touch and wanted to fund it and work with us, which was fantastic. So then they funded the game. And I guess that was really how we met because you were working with Mastertronic at the same time
Yeah, exactly. I remember I
on
was working on
Orbitalis.
Orbitalis at the time. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah, so I
yeah, go
was
on, go
going
on.
the game. The game itself is a narrative-driven walking sim, and I sort of say walking sim, half jokingly. I do think it's like a dumb thing to say, but people know what you mean when you say it, and I don't think it's overly offensive. But yeah, so it was a walking sim, but we hit just at the wrong time. So now, obviously, sort of walking sims are 10 a penny, and anyone can make them. But this was when it was before Dear Esther came out that we were working on Dream, and the mod was out, but the game wasn't. So I think Dear Esther announced, and then we announced first batch of games greenlit. It was actually quite big. We're sort of on 20-year-olds on like Kotaku and Polygon and stuff like that. That was really big. So that was really exciting. And then after it's Gone Home announced, now obviously Gone Home's fantastic, Dear Esther fantastic. Um, so we were working on the game, and because early access was like a new thing, we thought, oh well, Greenlight went so well. Mastertronic want to do early access, we want to do early access. Let's sort of try and tease out the game with like episodes, but it was never designed to be episodic. So there's failure number one. But we've started to put out sort of content episodically. So then Dear Esther came out, we started to put out content, and then Gone Home came out. And then I think probably because we weren't as skilled at making games as them because of years in industry, but also they had their content done when ours was sort of coming out in waves. Dear Esther and Gone Home obviously like really popped off, and then shortly after that you had things like Stanley Parable, but we were still developing content and still sort of bringing out these little pieces of content, which in hindsight just didn't work. Now, the game actually, I've like financially, it did really well. Like we were really really happy with it. Critically, I wouldn't say it did poorly, but it didn't do great. But then again, when you're standing next to these other games, those other games are better. It's just like going back and actually playing Dream. I'm quite surprised how it holds up. But next to Gone Home and Stanley Parable, it's not quite there.
I remember like watching the trailer, watching the videos. I remember that I play Dream when it actually came out, and I remember I've never had a chance to finishing it because my attention span for games is very very low, and I remember that I got stuck at
Yeah.
a point and I was like, oh yeah, I'm finish it tomorrow, and
Well,
then I never, and now I want to go back and finish it
well,
actually.
one of the other things about it is that it's long. Like it's I would say it's too long. But again, we were enjoying making it. We kept coming up with ideas for content. They fitted in with the game. They were different experiences every time. So sort of every different little dream you go to is different. So I think creatively it's sort of viable to have that much stuff. Like we were enjoying making it. It was a very creative process. But when you look at it, that game is probably about 8 hours long. When again, games of the genre and what people sort of expected, you're more talking like 1 to 2 hours. So again, it's sort of hindsight's the best thing. But I think if you look back and like, okay, well, let's make it like literally a quarter of the length, and either ship it quicker or be able to make the content we have better. I think that it could have gone even better than it did. But for being a first game, like I say, being commercially successful, being able to live with and work with like best mates, it's a fantastic experience.
And I think that
Um,
overall, if even just looking at the trailer, I can see that there is so much stuff going on. Like I can see that there were so many different scenes, there were so many different mechanics, so many different shader things and technologies. So I can see why the game was such a big project. Some
and
games they just use a single mechanic over and over again, while you had so much stuff going on, and I'm sure it takes so long to actually make that.
so it did take ages, but not so much because of the mechanics themselves. It's because we're using UDK, so effectively Unreal 3. People argue that it's not, but it effectively was. And because we're using UDK, they didn't have any kind of system, that we were using, similar to prefabs or to blueprints. So when we were setting stuff up, I would have to like go in and set stuff up again and again and again. And there's a level set in a factory, and I just spent a week it probably was around a week, just setting up doors because every door I was sort of setting up individually. Um, so yeah, looking back at it now, and actually me and Ash have talked about it a few times. We reckon we could probably like port some stuff over and then remake it in Unreal 4 in probably about 6 to 8 months. But it's just one of those things where other creative things are out there to do. There's other stuff to do. So it's not sort of the most exciting prospect at the minute. Like I would love to do it and I loved working on it, but and then actually one of the other things is because in the intro, obviously you were saying about I didn't work on dreams, plural. Um, so do you know much about dreams and how long been in development for?
I think I've heard about Dreams being in development for a long time, but I'm not sure.
So so I don't have like a precise year count, but it must be about 7 years, 6, 7 years. Um, so when we went to our first, it might have actually been our second DGX. So when we went with Mastertronic, when we were under Mastertronic, but it was either the first or the second DGX. We had the name Dream, obviously, had it on like a banner and everything like that. And like I said, we were on this business course at the time, and the business course told us to put a little TM next to the logo. And this is a good shout for anyone if you're indies or making games out there, is to trademark something and put a TM next to it. You just do. You don't sign up for it. You don't write a letter to anyone. Just put a TM there. It shows that it's yours. It shows that it's been trademarked, and you're done. Registered trademarks are different. So if it's got an R there, it is different. But if you put a TM there, you're good. So when sort of one of our advisors told us that, we thought, okay, we're all on the logo and on the shirts, we'll just put a TM and it'll be fine. So we did that and sort of carried on our merry little way. And then probably, I don't know, 6 months to a year later, Media Molecule announced this really cool looking game E3. Again, this would have easily been 5 years ago. Announced this cool looking thing where like you make stuff and you walk into these worlds, and they just never named it. And then they sort of walked off the Sony stage. And then a few months after that, I was at a networking event, and this guy from Sony Liverpool, I don't know what his name is, and he told me never to tell the story because he'd get in trouble, but it's fine because it's so long ago. It doesn't. And again, I don't know his name. I don't. Is Sony Liverpool even a studio still?
I have no idea.
I feel
I
like
have
they
no
closed
idea.
down. Well, sorry if they are still going, they may not have closed down. I feel like they might
So
have.
if you are still
Anyway,
going, please close YouTube now. Thank you.
so yeah, so he was quite tipsy, and he was like, never tell anyone this, blah blah blah. But that game was originally going to be called Dream, um, and sort of everything was about going into other people's dreams, but it was just titled Dream, almost because it's like your activity, like you're going to dream. So ready for this E3, they apparently, and again I don't know this for certain, it's just what this guy told me, but apparently they had all their trailers and marketing with Dream on it. They had all these flyers printed out. They had sort of everything going. But because we showed our game EGX and had the little TM there, they just couldn't call it Dream.
Oh my god,
And
this is
then
amazing.
yeah, so it's just one of those silly things. Which again, if we hadn't put that TM there, they probably wouldn't have risked it. I don't know. It's Sony, they're a big company. They might have done. But yeah, so then they didn't actually announce the name for probably like another 2 years. So I imagine they announced the name maybe 3 years or so ago. But the thing is, I completely forgot about it until they announced the name, and then I was like, oh right, yeah, that shouldn't have an S on it.
So basically, you have enemies now.
But,
You have enemies at
well,
Sony now.
yes. So that is also what makes it even worse. So obviously at the time we were doing Dream and everything, I was a student. And even though I wanted to live like this indie life and everything, the company I wanted to work at was Media Molecule. Um, and yeah. So and sort of they're relatively local to me. One of their founders lives in Ipswich, which is like the next town over from me. So I was sort of already set up that if this doesn't go well, I'll just pitch myself to Media Molecule. So yeah, so they've heard of me, but it may not be for the best reasons.
So
But
they have your face on the wall with like
on a dartboard,
exactly. So we have a couple more people joining the show. So hi Ringocam, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Hi James, and we have a question from Tim again. It says, Sam, a lot of people aspire to be indie developers from the start rather than spending a while in the industry first. Based on your experience, what would you recommend?
So well, it's different for everyone. Literally not just because of like the state of the industry. So when I started, green light wasn't a thing. Obviously, that's literally been and gone now. We didn't have free engines like Unreal, Unity was paid at the time. So it was a very different landscape. I would say if you want to be an indie before trying anything out in industry, start as soon as possible. So if you're still in school, literally start today. Like there's no argument not to. All the tools are free. So you literally need to start making games today. Make games for game jams, and then share them online, which is also free on things like Itch and Game Jolt. And while you're doing that, make sure to get all the feedback you can. And again, this could be a talk in itself. Like I'm sort of strongly feedback is good. Your brain's a filter. You need to take everything in and then filter through it. But you should get every piece of feedback possible. But then, so that's sort of I guess more. You've got the tools now, which was a bit different for me, and you've got the way to share, which is very different. Obviously, you can run things like blogs and Twitch streams and YouTube channels and everything to promote stuff. But then the other thing is know know yourself and know what you want to do, because you personally, whether it is being creative and making something interesting in a game which is different and unique from everyone else, like because it's your voice, you need to do that and sort of be very personable. But also, if you want to talk to any kind of funding, so whether it is publishers, charitable organisations, like angel investors, anything like that. Again, it all comes down to your personality and I guess being humble and just being you. So, like the cop out answer is if you want to be an indie game developer, start making games right now because nothing's stopping you, and sort of be yourself and put a lot of yourself in your projects because it does really pay off.
And I think
so I know.
Yeah, if I can add on that advice, I think that if you want to be an indie game developer, it's likely that you have an idea, a game you want to make that you might have had for decades, probably. Don't make that game. If this is your first game, for the love of God, do not make the game of your life, because it will implode. It will fail. Start with something small that you can upscale. Don't start with the project of your life. Do that when you have the money, the resources, otherwise it will be a mess. You will not have enough money, enough people, enough skills, enough experience, enough networking contacts to make it actually work, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, I'll add to that in a minute, but don't beat yourself up. Like you're saying, this is your first game. It's quite literally your first rodeo. If it's not perfect, if everyone doesn't jump for joy about it, if you don't get 5 retweets and like 10 likes, it doesn't matter. It's your first game. Like just get it done. I've heard a lot of people refer to it as like the first pancake or the first burger at a barbecue. Like you're not going to get it right out the gate. You have to, like anything, whether you're a game developer, musician, artist, builder, engineer, you've got to, earn your stripes and do all of this stuff to then get good. So really is just go for it early as you can. And also, if you are, 40, 60, working in a job and you want to make games, still start today. It's just at that point, obviously, it's more of a hobbyist thing until you can build it up to be a career change if that's what you want.
So, speaking of, indie games and solo projects, you've actually worked on something really cool that is mainlining. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so actually, I guess linking all of this together, when it came to our first game, the first game I made with the Hypersoft team was Dream, and actually one of the reasons we wanted to start there was because to have a character walk around and interact with things is obviously one of the simplest things you can do in a 3D space. So you're literally walking, and then we're telling a narrative while you go. So that's why that was the first thing. Now, mainlining, I separated from Hypersoft. We're still literally great friends, talk all the time. But I physically moved. So when I moved, I sort of decided to sort of part ways with that. So when it comes to mainlining, I set up my own company, worked with some really great people, So I worked with Jared Emerson Johnson, who did the music for the game, and he did all the music for the Telltale stuff, so like Batman and Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and Sam Max. So that was a amazing privilege to work with him. Jill Murray wrote on the game, who is a fantastic writer and done loads of great stuff with Assassin's Creed and Tomb Raider series. And then also got to work with Dave Gray, who was a pixel artist who I sort of followed at the time. And Dave's fantastic. So mainlining effectively, sort of to say like the next run on the ladder, is made in Game Maker. So if you can make a game in any engine, do it. It's fantastic. But I tried to think, what game can I make which doesn't have any animations, which oh god, I had some other limitations. Oh yeah, which doesn't have any animations because they were hard in Dream. Doesn't have any voice acting because that was hard in Dream. And because I was doing it by myself, I couldn't do 3D, so it had to be 2D. So like I sort of knew my limitations. And then at that point, I thought, well, if I can't have voice actors and animation, then what if I have display pictures? So then, like a character was effectively like a picture, and so it could be like text on a phone, it could be like MSN, it could be this and it could be that. And then really just sort of running down that line, I developed Mainlining, which is a sort of a PC emulator. So the whole game is on a virtual PC, and you play as a detective, and you have to hack into people's computers to find information and then make arrests.
And I'm obsessed with the graphics. I'm a big fan of pixel art, and I'm a big fan of games that have like desktop inside. So I'm really obsessed with the art style. I think it's really good actually.
Yeah, so Dave did a fantastic job on that game. But actually, looking back at that, there's one thing which I the art is so good, and I think that it doesn't sing as well because as it's such a low res, the text doesn't register right. So it's one of those things. Again, with Dream, where I'd love to go back and remake it in Unreal. I would love to go back and remake Mainlining and make his artwork sing.
And we also have a couple of new people. Hi, Salman. Hi, Walter. And Walter Ali says art looks great. Yes, it does. I can confirm. It really does. It really does. I really love the kind of aesthetic. It's so nostalgic, and so it hits all the right spot for me. Now, there's actually the main things I want to show today. It's a game that you worked on in the past, but unfortunately has never been released, has never been announced, and apparently the game is sort of resurrected, or there's a chance that it might come back. Do you want to talk a bit about Loco?
Yeah, so Loco, you got it on the screen at the
Yep,
minute?
yep.
Because I obviously can't say. Okay, so Loco, again, going up sort of this ladder of stuff we could do. I wanted to make a pixel art game, but I wanted to make it 3D. So I guess there's loads of different ways you can look at doing that. Enter the Gungeon do it really well, like in a way that Enter the Gungeon looks 2D, but it is in a 3D world. It's in Unity, and they have like this really cool lighting going on and stuff like that. So I wanted to work in that art style, so I had to make a shift because Game Maker can do 3D games, but you wouldn't like it's an uphill battle. Like so, I sort of knew I had to leave Game Maker for mainlining. So I started working in Unity. I wanted to build a team, so hired Dave, who did all the artwork for mainlining. Got a coder called Peter Williams on to develop that game. And actually, this game, again, talking about like not games that not your dream game, but other stuff. This, I think, was the first game I wanted to make, which was a little bit of a dream game. So I grew up on Gears of War, and I love Gears of War. It's absolutely fantastic because the cover system and the roadie run were just sort of completely unique at the time. So I wanted to effectively make a 2D Gears of War, and I actually wanted to make this before mainlining came out. And we're at an event showing Dream, and so we're good friends with Devolver, and they had invited us over to their booth to sort of check out what they were showing, and they had Not a Hero. And when I saw Not a Hero, I just sort of put hands up and were like, no, it's been done. Like I won't bother. Because it is that cover-based 2D game. Like it is, they may not see it as 2D Gears of War, but to me that was the start point, was 2D Gears of War. But I don't know, when I'd finished mainlining and was thinking about the next project, thinking about what I could work on, this game sort of popped into my head again, And I thought, you know what? I never actually played Not a Hero. I'd met the guys. Guys are great. Simon, I've met quite a few times. He wouldn't know who I was, but I've met him quite a few times, and they're fantastic. Like Ollie Ollie's great. But when I actually played Not a Hero, I wasn't a fan. And I know that your display picture is obviously Not a Hero, so I'm not
I
really
was
sure if you
actually
had anything to
showing
do
it,
with it.
but yeah, go
I
on, go
didn't
on.
ask on purpose because I thought you might come out with a story that you did something on the game. But yeah, playing it, like I say, great guys. Love Roll 7, love Devolver, but I'm not a fan of Not a Hero.
Well, I sort of did play testing
Um,
for Not a Hero. I remember doing some translation for Oli Oli. I don't remember if I don't think I've done any translation for Not a Hero, but no, I don't think I did. I think I've probably just done some play testing.
I saying that, actually, another link actually so from Not a Hero to Mainlining. In Mainlining originally, so the game is completely scripted. Hopefully you can go down different routes, but it is a scripted project. I didn't want it to be scripted. I wanted everything in Mainlining to be like a modular, like basically a narrative roguelike. So because again we don't have animation and stuff, so you can sort of mess around with story beats and things quite easily. But I want it to basically be Cluedo, but instead of moving from room to room, oh, in America it's called Clue. Instead of going room to room and getting like candlesticks and finding out it was Miss Marple or whatever it is, I wanted it all to be coding. And actually, I've got a prototype somewhere of all that working, and it's fantastic, and I was really proud of it. But when it comes to those kind of sentences all being dragged around and mixed matched, you just can't localize it, or at least I can't. But so if say we're like, okay, well we've got a car, and when you follow it, it's a red car, but so it's different every time. It could be a blue car, it could be a green car. Then instantly, obviously, languages flip around descriptors and things like that, and it just doesn't work. So I just had to scrap it because publishers, at least at the time, only wanted games which could be localized. And then in Not a Hero, where they have sort of like some Monty Python-esque dialogue where things like randomly get spewed out. When that was localized into other languages, basically they again, this may be wrong. I think this is right. They like spewed out a load of text and sort of found some really funny lines which came from the English version, but then actually just translated those, so those things are sort of stuck in.
So I remember that the English version, well, the Italian version for Oli Oli had some of the worst translation I've ever seen. Just, and I don't know why that was the case, but I remember that basically the skateboard tricks. I know nothing about skateboard. They call tricks, but tricks in Italian means makeup because the makeup is a trick, right? So it had this very
Okay.
unusual double meaning that was not supposed to be there, I guess. And it really shows how sometimes when you have decontextualized words, if it's just like trick, how do you know if it's makeup or if it's a skateboard trick? So it can be very tricky sometimes to contextualize translation with if you only have a random pieces of word around the screen. So that was my experience
Yeah.
with the game. But I
So
yeah, go on.
I was just going to start talking about Loco. What was it you wanted to ask?
So I know that Loco started as a Unity game, but then it's an Unreal game. What is that about?
So Loco was a game for a year. I spent a lot of money on it.
I can
And
see
again,
that.
this, I
It
mean,
looks amazing.
I can.
I'm obsessed. It
Oh,
looks
but I think it
amazing.
looks terrible. If it's the Unity stuff you're showing, I think it looks like trash, and that's not because of Dave's artwork. Dave's artwork's phenomenal. I think it's actually because half of it we didn't get to put in. We didn't get to do loads of stuff. You'll see sort of a bit more in the Unreal version, but
I'm showing the Unreal
yeah,
version. I'm
it's.
showing that one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the Unreal stuff, but basically, we're working on it for a year. A lot of it was R&D. Obviously, we had this sort of like new camera we wanted to get going, and that had loads of issues, which I can go into at length, but I won't right now. Yeah, so we're sort of trying to work on this art style, and like I say, we're running for about a year. I want to say probably about 9, 10 months in. Dave really got the characters nailed in the perspective and everything, and we're very happy with those. So we sort of got some of those animated. Um, and then literally, I'm going to say it was probably about 2, 3 days before. It may have even been the day before we had to stop development, and it was just like cold stop. and also it was like about 2 weeks before Christmas. It was awful. Like I had to sort of basically shut down a company and let everyone go weeks before Christmas. But probably, yeah, like 2 days before shutting down, Dave did this amazing mock-up of a train, where everything was pixel perfect, perspective, perfect color, everything. And I just loved it. And it made it that much harder that it was almost like the day we shut down, I finally got to see what it would have looked like. So the reason we moved to Unity, as I said, was we wanted this 3D camera, we wanted lighting, we wanted to try out all this kind of stuff. And also because I wanted to make a team and we hired people, Unity you can hire for much easier because it's C sharp. So that's sort of why we were there. But now since Christmas, so yeah, about 5 6 months, I've started to remake the game by myself. Obviously, that's a different team, different budget, everything. I've literally have not spent a penny, and I'm not going to spend a penny on it. But because I'm doing it all like that, I'm coding everything. It's all done in Unreal because I know Unreal and I know blueprints. So that's why I made the change, and I'm so happy I made the change because I love Unreal. And I sort of forgot that those days of using UDK on Dream, I really enjoyed using the tools. It wasn't just getting like cool outcomes. I like enjoyed using the tools. Unity is a great engine and you can build great things in it, exactly like GameMaker. But I don't enjoy them like I enjoy using Unreal and using blueprints.
Is there anything in particular that you're not happy with Unity? Like, is there any key difference there? Because, there's a lot of people saying, oh, Unity versus Unreal, sort of war, whether that's true or not. But is there something
Well,
specific that works better for
I
you?
think I think the key thing is the outcome you get. So it doesn't matter what tools you use. It's purely the outcome. So I think they can both effectively make everything as good as each other.
Yeah.
It is just like the work pipeline. For me, blueprints is the biggest thing. I don't feel like Unity's ever had a good a good visual scripting language. They sort of promoted Bolt for a while and they promoted UScript for a while, and people have been telling me one's been working on in the shadows for like 6 7 years. But they don't have anything anywhere near Kismet, let alone blueprints. So that's my big thing. I know when it comes to like Unity interface and stuff, again, I don't get on with it as much, but I think that's probably more of just I've used Unreal for longer, so it's not really a dig. Something I do like actually about Unity is the folder structure. I don't know if that's getting sort of a bit nerdy for people if they haven't used Unity before, but some stuff like that's nice. But I think just generally, Unreal is, I don't know. Now I was going to say like it's just made for games. Like I feel like I can just make really cool game stuff in it. Everything's sort of focused towards games. But obviously now they've got all that and they're branching out into cinema and everything there. Now when I use it or when I sort of show other people who use it and teach other people how to use it, it can be used for other industries. And now that's starting to really excite me that this skill set isn't just for games anymore. It's like a cool tool I love using, but now I can use it for film.
You were mentioning, one of the reasons why you really like Unreal is because of the blueprints. And paradoxically, it's the reason why I don't like Unreal. It's because, I'm a hardcore programmer. So I want to write code. I need to see my code. I need to type my semicolon, right? And but also, I don't like to do memory management. And I think that I'm a big fan of C sharp. And so because of that, I'm very happy. I'm way, way happier writing C sharp code than using a blueprint system. But again, this is my personal experience because I've always been writing code. I know that for some other people, it's exactly the opposite because they don't want to fight the compiler. They want to get stuff done. And I think that visual scripting for that really makes sense. For me, it would be yet another language that it's further from everything I've done already. So I think it's my.
I think the main thing for me is blueprints. It's pretty much like just logic. So where something like C sharp, you've got to understand the syntax and how to write it, and then also the logic of if I do this, then this, else this. Where with blueprints, obviously you do have all of that. It literally is exactly the same, but the syntax is more like a very pretty flowchart instead of reams of code and a monitor awkwardly placed in portrait.
Yeah, I think that I'm really happy with doing visual scripting only on stuff like shaders mostly because making shader code compile, it's an
Yeah.
absolute nightmare. And having a graph that you can use to build shaders really takes away all the syntax shenanigans that you would otherwise have, you know. So in that specific instance, I'm a big fan of not writing code by using shaded graphs or, you know, whatever other tool it's available for code, because I'm so proficient with C sharp and I find it so elegant. I'm like, no, let me see the code. I want to enjoy it.
So,
So
so that's
cool.
actually something that with Unreal I would really like to look into. So the C++ stuff, but at the minute I haven't found a need for it. So usually I'd say, like, you want to prepare to be ready for something coming up. So you should learn C++ and I should prepare myself. But because I've never needed it, I'm enjoying blueprints. So I'm sure there'll be a day where I'll have to do something in C++, but
The
not
nightmare.
yet.
So I also know that
I'm sorry.
I
Go on.
also know that on top of all those things in games, you also work in education. You're also a lecturer. So, what tools do you use? Do you focus on Unity? Do you focus on Unreal? What has been your experience with students learning the different tools?
So I've worked at two colleges, one where I wasn't the boss, but I was part of a great team, and now a new one where I effectively am a boss. Like I work along with someone, but we both are very like-minded. So at the first college, we were teaching Unity. Now again, because I'd come off of LOCO, I sort of was proficient in Unity. Understand it's a great tool. A lot of people get hired off the back of it. We're doing that, and we had some success. People liked making games, so they were enthused enough to learn the syntax and the logic. But it always seemed to be like, oh wow, yes, we've now finally got a block moving around, and we've finally got a ray trace to calculate something. And it was sort of like, even though it was really fun and people got excited when something happened, you weren't making like games. You were just making like tiny little things. You were understanding what a ray trace was. So now, as I run a course and we're teaching Unreal, we've literally just making, like, the first project I worked on was a first person shooter. There's 40 people in the class. By the end of it, we had 40 first person shooters. Some horror games with tortures and hiding mechanics. Some platformers with like bounce pads and countdown timers. Some like FPS target ranges. So you got a timer and you got to shoot these targets and so long. But the thing is, like, some people, and actually people in the IT department, almost like looked down on it, like, oh, visual scripting's not coding, and it's just rubbish. Like, we're using if statements, we're using booleans, we're using integers, we're using, switches and arrays. Like, we code. It's just we're not training to be coders and work in a team of coders and code like backends and servers. We're learning to prototype. So when we come up with an idea or come up with a feature, we can test it before wasting everyone else's time.
I think you got a
Um,
really interesting point, because I feel that a lot of people that don't see the value in visual scripting, they don't understand how programming works. It's not about writing code, it's about what you can do with that. And if there is a way to make code that is more efficient and more accessible to people, well, welcome. Like, why
yeah,
shouldn't we use it? If people use it better, I think it's great. And I think that a lot of people in the industry don't often realize the value that people can have by doing something different. And I think it's a big problem. If people use a tool better, then they can use the tool better. Why forcing them not to use it? In the end, it produces the same results. And but something interesting you mentioned
yeah,
is that about the teaching, of visual scripting and stuff like that, is that one of the reasons why I prefer teaching code, typing code to my students, is that I know that the chances of becoming a successful indie game developer are slim. It's not automatic. If you study game design,
yeah.
if you study game development, I wouldn't say that 100% of people will become CEOs of their own indie game studio. That's very unlikely. But C sharp, it's something that you can reuse in the industry pretty much. It's so widely used, so you can still sell yourself even if your career as a game developer sort of fails. And even Unity, it's a tool you can still use as you said, to make stuff that is not games. I've seen you using for medical purposes, for theater, for cinema stuff, for research. So in a way, I'm like, we teach you those tools, and we teach you the skills to make games. But if that bits doesn't work, you can still reuse them to find a job that might not necessarily be games.
Okay, so I guess even though you've like I say, I know C sharp, like mainlining was done in GML, which is very very similar, and I've done C sharp for like XNA and stuff, and Unity. One thing you said there is that like if you're a failure in being an indie dev, we sort of touched on this sort of in a private conversation the other day, but obviously I don't know sort of the ins and outs of your story and when you became a teacher and things like that. But I have been making games while I've been teaching, and obviously Loco failed. Sadly, just in a time we sort of haven't gone into all the ups and downs. So hopefully I'll come back another day and actually do a proper dissection of that and talk about the pitching and everything. But that as that failed, like the game failed. Like there's no two ways about it. I call a spade a spade. That failed. But I don't necessarily see me as failing being an indie dev. Like, do you see? Because obviously you teach as well. I teach. You teach. Like, do you see yourself as failing at being an indie dev?
This is a really tricky question, and I've been like when I started working for real, to how what your parents would say. Now you're working for real. I remember having really strong feelings because I was like, oh my God, if I get a full-time job, traditional job, does it mean I failed being an indie? And I think initially I thought yes. In my mind, I was like, oh my God, this means that I'm not making enough money as an indie developer to be the only thing I do, right? But then I think that if you look at a different perspective, it's not, because it's like, well, independent indie developer means that I'm independent. And the fact that I have another job means that I can work on what I want, whether or not is a commercial success. And in a way, for me, it's sort of what Patreon allows me in a sense. So it's not if the game succeeds that makes me a successful developer. For me, it's whether or not I'm able to work on what I want. And I think that a lot of the time, but that's my perspective. But I feel that a lot of the time we judge the success of a game based whether or not the game, how many copies it sells, and people use like something like Steam Spy. Is it called Steam Spy? Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still up. I haven't looked at it in ages, but yeah, it was Steam Spy.
Yeah, and to see if a game is a success, and I'm like, well, there's so many more things that indicates if a game is good. For example, when you said, LOCO was a failure, I died inside because I'm looking at a video and I can't stop watching. I can't stop watching how good it feels. I'm desperate to play it. So for me, LOCO, it's a big success. Everything else around it maybe didn't work, but the prototype, I just want to play it. So for me, it's not a failure. It's an amazing success because I'm watching something unfinished and I'm like, when can I play it?
So how long have we got? Seeing the time, because I can be here all night. How long have we actually got?
We can go on for 10 minutes, I guess. But
okay, cool. Okay, so I feel like I probably started in like a similar position to you. So after LOCO failed, and it in my mind that's sort of set in stone. It did. Like I had to lay people off. I wanted to work on it for 2 years and I couldn't. Sort of they had to then get other jobs and things like that. I pitched it to loads of publishers. Everyone turned it down for different reasons.
Give me their names. We will kill them.
So actually, one was really interesting, and I will sort of name people because I've got nothing bad to say about anyone. Everyone's fantastic, and they're all right. It was me who was wrong, but again, 10 minutes is not enough time for me to go into why. But I think one of the funniest rejections I got, and I don't know if they meant it to be funny. I think they were being dead serious, but it made me laugh and probably shed a tear. Is Tiny Build. So again, fantastic publisher, really cool guys. I wouldn't have wanted to work with them otherwise, but I sent them a build of the game and the trailer and sort of pitch deck and all this kind of stuff, and they just said, "Oh no, sorry, we can't back it because we've already got a game with the train in it. What comes out next month?" And I just thought, "Oh God, like that's what it's come down to now. If your game's got train in." But that was the last station, which is a cool game. So, um, but no, yeah. So I at the time I saw myself as a massive failure. It was properly. I don't want to say depression because I think that word's thrown around a bit too much, and that is obviously a very serious sort of chemical thing, and I wouldn't like to for a minute pretend that I had that, but it was tough. Like it was a very very bad time, um, and I went into education like really kicking and screaming. Like I wasn't a student anymore. Sort of had a mortgage, had this and that, sort of had bills to pay. So literally again, like the day it failed, I went out and got a job as a Chinese driver. I just thought I'm not sort of pretending I'm something I'm not. I need money, so I'm going to go drive and deliver Chineses. And then around 2 months later, I got a job as a games lecturer. And at the time, I thought, well, I need the money. I'm literally a takeaway guy. I can't turn like a great stable job down. But I really went in kicking and screaming because in my mind it had failed. Everything was now null and void. I wasn't a game dev anymore. I was just a teacher. And then instantly, when I started working with students and making projects, that just completely went away. And now, like, it's just fucking ridiculous. Sorry if I'm not allowed to swear. You can blank that out. It really winds me up now. And I was one of these people. I think that's probably why I get so annoyed about it. When people look down at you for not doing games full time, because I know I did it at events. People would come up to me and tell me they were university lecturers, and I just thought, oh, that's a failed game designer. And like I say, it's just nothing's further from the truth. So since I've been in a classroom and working with people, instead of making one game for 2 years, making 40 small prototypes in a month. It's just so much creativity, get a buzz around it. Like when I was working on games, it was a job, so I'd work in there like start at 9, go get a coffee at 10 and do this and do some emails and Skype calls, and then like not actually ever be passionate about making something because that obviously would wear off after a month, and we've got 2 years of the project now. Well, now I get up at 4 every day just so I can work on stuff I love doing before then going and making money, also teaching stuff that I love. Yeah, it's no. If you're a game developer, it's the same as being an artist or a musician. If you're an artist and you paint, you're an artist. It doesn't matter if you're a banker or it doesn't matter if you work at Tesco's. If you make art, you're an artist. Same as if you're a musician. If you play gigs, if you put stuff on Spotify, it doesn't matter if you're also a postman, like you're a musician. It's exactly the same for game design. Like, don't ever let anyone tell you you're not a game designer. If you're making some cool stuff, however small, and putting it out online, there's no badge, there's no club. You are a game designer, and it's sort of no ifs, no buts.
I think this is really, really interesting. And it's so, if that makes you feel better, we have Pesky Fox in the chat saying Sam is an amazing lecturer, by the way. which,
Thanks.
which I think it always helps. So something I work in a variety of different institutions as well. As a lecturer. Actually, my story is a bit different because I was working in higher education before being a game developer. So if you want, game developer was me failing higher education. If that so double fail means that now I won. I don't know. I'm a success. Sorry, I don't know. But no, beside the jokes. I it's really, I really recognize what you're saying. I really recognize myself in what you're saying. I think the difference is that I've always enjoyed teaching because I knew that was something that I enjoyed. So when I started, I was very happy. And I work at Goldsmith, and I'm very lucky that the majority of people that are working in my courses, they actually have experience in game development. And I don't see that. Okay. I don't see this making them failed developers because now they're not doing it, which is not, a lot of them are still doing it, by the way. I see these as an added value, because we don't just have the knowledge, we also have the experience. And we've done it on our own, on ourselves. We
Yeah.
have the scars of that. So I think that this adds so much more value to the conversation, because now when you talk with students, you're not someone that has only done this stuff theoretical. It's not okay. Let's see some code, because I've studied code before giving this lecture. I always try to channel some experience about my story, my passion, and I think that this makes so much more difference. And I love telling
Yeah.
students about little stories from the game industry, little things here and there. And I think that they can see the passion. They can see if you have knowledge, they
Yeah.
can see if you
100%.
have
Yeah.
passion, they can see if you have both. And there will be probably a point in time where, if I keep doing this for 50 years, I wish I live that long. If I do this for 30 years, probably I will not have the knowledge anymore of using Unity 2065. I don't know. And maybe, but I feel that the passion and the stories will still be there. So I feel it's an added value that nobody can take away from us, in a way. And yes,
Yeah, it's one of those things where, whatever course you're on, like say you are an artist and you're teaching art, or you're a musician and you're teaching music, it's one of those things that the students are literally there because they want to have the experiences you've already had. So I think it just really like offers an insight that they're genuinely interested in. Because then the second people are engaged and the people are enjoying it, then they're focusing, and then when they're focusing, that's when they can start to learn. And then when they start to learn, they start to make games, and then it's this sort of ever fulfilling thing that it's just that is sort of how I think teaching should be done.
and
That's not to blow my own trumpet. It's just I think having experience from the industry before going in is exactly what everyone should do.
and I really like the thing you mentioned, the fact that I'm not making a game in 4 years. Now I'm making 4 games in a month. I think that this is so. You also have to mark them, so maybe that is not
Yeah,
at least for me, that is not the most fun part of the job. But but I feel that it's really the essence for me of teaching, the ability to that's something I was saying with Tommy Thompson a couple of weeks ago. The fact that, yes, I'm upset. I'm really sad that nothing I've made has gone massively popular. Nothing I've made has gone probably as successful as some of the titles, as a Dear Esther or as a Gone Home, or as a Gang Beast for what it matters. Pico Nico is quite good, but my work on that, I wasn't the main designer of that, so I can't claim. I don't feel it's my baby in that sense. There's my work in there, but I don't feel it's my work. And I feel that if so in that sense I feel I failed, but at the same time, if one of my students manages to create something that is successful because of the input that I've given to them, then I feel that I've done it. I feel that in a way, not to take away, of course, credits, but in a way I feel that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
if their achievement was made possible because I've transferred some of my passion, some of my skills, some of my experience, then I feel that I've done my job. And the idea that I can make students better than I can make them more successful than I am because I can show them the mistakes I've done or the opportunities I've missed. That to me, it's the very essence of being a lecturer. It's the ability to take the generation and make
yeah.
it better than what you've done.
And that's why it's a shame I haven't been able to talk about all the things that I did wrong with Loco, because we've just been talking about other bits. Because I did a lot wrong with Loco. But I guess then to try and wrap up, because like I said to you, I could talk forever. If you were to make a game now, if say in 6 months' time you got an idea and it's just like, okay, no, I really want to make this. Obviously, I'm going to teach and I'm going to do stuff. It may take like 2-3 years, but in odd bits of time, I'm going to make this. When you release that game, so when you release your next game, what would success look like to you, like for that project?
Oh God, It is very tricky because personally, so at my very core, in my heart, it will never be enough. And I'm sure of that. Like that
Okay.
lyric, never, never enough. I feel I could sing that. And it's because whatever I would still be comparing the game. So you could say, well, if the game makes me financially independent for the rest of my life, it's successful. Well, financial independent
Right.
means how much money do you want to spend, how luxurious you want to live your life. So I feel that whatever I make, I will never be happy because I can always look at someone making more. I will always look at something
So,
making more.
so for you, it'd still be tied effectively to like income, and then obviously that is how many
No,
games are
no,
sold.
not necessarily, not necessarily. I'm saying that because it's the quickest metric you have, right? But
Yeah.
if it could be how popular it is, in that sense, how many downloads it has, how many good reviews it has, a metric that it's easy to quantify, I guess. For me, that would be the most immediate metric. But at the same time, knowing that this is what I feel, I'm getting better at taking that at bay. So when I'm releasing something, I'm thinking, okay, how much work, how much money I put into that, how many working hours I've put into that game, into that project, meaning how much should I realistically expect back from it. So if it's something very small, like Orbitalis, for example, I wasn't expecting Orbitalis to do that well, as how well as he did. So for me, it was a big success because
Yeah.
he did better than my own expectations. But was it commercially successful compared to, I don't know, Dream? Maybe not. So in that sense, I think that because my expectation was exceeded, I felt it was a very successful game. Financially, it
So
wasn't. It wasn't independent forever, so he failed on that.
there's some things with orbitalis that actually I was really quite jealous of, but again, that is literally like a whole conversation for like another day. So I will actually put a pin in that. But I did ask you to have some orbitalis footage ready to go because I thought we'd go down that road. But it is literally is another conversation.
But
I guess
I'm
for
always
me,
happy to have people coming back if there's a good conversation going over. And I think we also have quite some comments, which I think it really shows that people are. I believe that they're enjoying it. So let me see some of the comments. We actually have quite a few people still watching, so I'm happy. I'm until unless people start to go down, I'm always happy to continue.
and still it starts drifting off. Yeah.
So
Okay.
some of the messages we have, one from Tim saying, this is a super crunchy, interesting conversation. Thank you so much. As a music teacher, musician, I always had a really similar set of thoughts about jobs versus dream job versus hobby. Yes, yes, I feel
Well,
this
I mean,
is a big struggle. For me, a hobby is something you like, but you don't do it for money. You don't even want to get money out of it. Otherwise, it's a job that gives you not much money. That's my experience. And we also have a comment from Salman SHH saying, not gonna lie, I'm jealous of the students learning from you guys. Thank you so much. Hopefully that will say the same. I went to uni for game dev and it nearly made me lose passion for game dev from teachers that didn't care about making games. I understand that. I really understand that because I know I've seen a lot of colleges preying on the dream of students, whether that was game development or academia or PhDs or other things. Unfortunately, colleges are a business. Even here in the UK, they're a business pretty much everywhere. So they need to make money. So they need to compromise. I'm happy that I found a place where, of course, not 100% of what I'm doing makes me happy because otherwise it would be a hobby. But but I'm happy that I'm not compromising on the values that for me are core to this profession. In the moment that I would had to start compromising, I would quit. And I've quit jobs before because of that. So it's not something I'm afraid of doing. If I have to
yeah.
compromise on the values, and if I had to deliver stuff that I don't think help the students, or if I had to somehow lure them in a college degree that I don't think was worth it, it's my name on that, so I wouldn't do it. And I
Yeah, no. So I have the exact same opinion, and where I'm working at now, West Suffolk College, is fantastic. Like because they put students first, and then me and Chris, who I run the course with, we both definitely put students first. And again, I think it's a feedback loop because then they enjoy it, and if everyone in that classroom is enjoying themselves, then I like going to work every day because obviously I am someone in that classroom at the end of the day. But I've literally had to sit in observations and watch people teach game design who are just dead behind the eyes. And it's just painful to see like the thing that I like literally love and have a passion for being taught by someone who doesn't care, and now those students don't care. And it's a real shame.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but then, at the end of the day, I can only do what's best for the people who are in the room. So yeah, it's a shame that you had that experience. If you still, like, I know you said that you lost passion. If you're still passionate about games, even if you just want to dip your toe in, definitely look into game jams. Itch is a great place for game jams. So yeah, definitely look into it.
And there's Salman is also mentioning that some lecturers are more interested in getting us to finish assignments and doing lots of written exams. So let me explain these very clearly. Written exams for games are bullshit.
Yeah, we don't do any at all.
We don't do any at
nothing
all.
like that.
Simply
No,
because
it's
I understand.
ridiculous.
For example, we have two modules about mathematics, right? And what do? You do exam for mathematics. No, you do not. You do projects that use the
Yeah.
knowledge. Jesus Christ. Exams, I feel that
Yes.
exams are also really bad for students that, for example, have anxiety, they have depression, they might have dyslexia. It doesn't help them. It just creates these fake environments that is not at all what the industry is like. It's just to give pressure to
Well, the thing,
students.
like an exam and that short period of time is prepping people for crunch. No one should be prepped for crunch, like because it shouldn't exist. What we should be doing is having coursework what lasts months at a time, which then emulates having a project which lasts for months at a time. Like yeah, I understand exams for very specific things. In creative industries, exams are pointless.
They're
No,
absolutely pointless. Yeah. I think
yeah,
ultimate.
it may
Yeah, go on, go on.
go on. No, okay. I think it makes sense when you're going for a job. So if, say, you were going for a job and someone asked you to do a sound test, like as in literally like record this and we want to see what you get out of it, or if someone asked you to do an art test, you've got 5 days, we want you to draw characters in this style, that sort of makes more sense. Because again, it's not an hour. It's like you've got some time to prepare if it's like an art test, or if you're going in and basically they want to see you can do the job, you should be able to do the job. So that makes more sense. But yeah, when it comes to like this academia test, it's almost like you've got an hour to be creative. I hope you're creative in this hour. It's ridiculous.
I have a lot of very conflicting emotions because, for example, even if you put an exam at a specific time, well, some people are not morning people. I'm not a morning person, so suddenly I'm losing 10 points just because it's 10 a.m. you know
Yeah.
so it's not a good environment for people, I think, to learn. But I understand at the same time that a lot of lecturers are under big pressure from above to follow regulation. There are a lot of regulations I don't like at Goldsmith, where I have very little power to change them. For example, I don't like giving grades to students. I prefer giving feedback. But one, I do not have the time to grade 60, to give, 1 hour feedback to 60 students because I would
Yeah.
implode. And also, I'm demanded by law to give a grade if they want a degree. So, that
So,
there's a level of compromise
so
you always have to do, I guess.
yeah, and at a time like this, that's obviously massively exacerbated because where you've got people who may be self-conscious and insecure and have obviously been locked in their home for months at a time, and then you say, "Oh yeah, here's your grade for the rest of the here, you've done all this work over the year. I haven't seen you in months, but here's your grade. And it's just like a letter. Like, who cares? Like, it means nothing. It means nothing to them. It means nothing to an examiner. It means nothing to anyone who's employing you. No one cares. Bin it. What is really important is that people get, yeah, like you say, that feedback, whether that is, you know, as much as you can write in a valid amount of time, whether that's a conversation, obviously at the minute over the phone or face to face when you see them. That's really what is important, because I, when it comes to getting a job in the games industry, if you know if that's what you want to do, if you want to walk into like a Rockstar or Activision and want to be like a small cog in a big machine, the grades, or I guess like the Twitter, but usually the grades, I guess, will get you through the front door. The second you've passed, the second you're in that car park, no one could care less about the grades you've got. Just no one cares. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it is all about your portfolio of work and your how personal you are. Like, and by that I mean, like, are you a nice person? Like, personable. Like, can they get on with you for 3 year stints? You know, so that and the work you produce is what matters. The grade doesn't matter. So I agree. I mean, you can use it well. You can have like things to strive for, and like, oh, you know, you're a few marks off, or if you just do this, then it will read better. Um, but yeah, a grade, especially now, is really dumb.
We have a comment from Salman saying, "I'm praying for anyone that has to do Ludum Dare as an exam." Actually, now I have to say something. Actually, one of my assignment for one of the modules I'm doing is called Ludum Dare, because I asked students to do a game that has as a theme the theme from the latest Ludum Dare. But I promise it's not over a weekend; it's over a month. and it's because they can clone an existing game and they have the source code available. So I promise, I'm not. I'm not doing Ludum Dare like an exam. I promise. But you know, I see academia as academia has been existed for a few years, so it's a giant monster that is very old, and it reacts very slowly to changes, and feels like game development, feels like programming. They need to change fast. You cannot teach Flash. If someone teaches Flash, I'm sorry, leave and set the place on fire. You know,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it doesn't mean that Flash wasn't a valid tool. It just means that if you're doing it for a career, for a job, I'm sorry, there isn't any anymore. You know, that's not unless you're doing digital archaeology. If you're doing game development, I'm sorry, that's not the field. But it's just to say that we need young people in academia, because not because they're young, but because we need to change rapidly to keep up with all the changes, with all the new technologies. I'm teaching Unity, but as I always said, I'm not teaching tools, because Unity, God knows how long it's around for, maybe dies tomorrow because the company goes bankrupt. Who knows? Or maybe lasts forever. I don't know. But likely in 5-10 years there won't be Unity, and if there is Unity, it's going to be a very different tool. It's going to look very different. So
Yeah.
don't the advice I can give is, don't learn tools, learn how to learn the skills necessary to learn new tools, to get new skills. And in a way, that's what I'm trying to do with tutorials. Every tutorial that I'm doing online is a tiny thing I don't know how to do. And this is something people ask me sometimes. How do you know so many things? I Google. I Google them.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Students worrying about, oh, do I need to know what every single like line of code or what every single node in Blueprints does? No, literally, I've got 3 monitors set up here. I have 2 with Unreal, and literally the third one is Spotify and Google. And whenever I don't know how to do anything, or whenever I just question, like, oh, would that work? Sometimes I'll just prototype it, and then sometimes I'll just throw up the documentation, because the thing is, I would never just sit and read documentation. And I think actually sometimes people think like, oh, well, who's ever going to read this? You know, it's like a manual like this thick, but online. No one's ever going to read it, because that would be ridiculous. But they've got a search bar, you know. So when you have a problem, that massive tome really is a paragraph, because you just search, you know, you search the paragraph you need. So actually, all documentation for all those kinds of engines, as long as obviously it's well written, is fantastic and is a great resource. People just get turned off because they think it's massive, when actually, if you use a line, great, it's there. Um, so yeah, but then when it comes to the way you teach, I completely agree. It's the teaching tools and things. It's like leading a horse to water. It's like I don't want to just say, go do this. That's great, done, tick. Go do this, great, done, tick. I always try and make it as open ended as feasibly possible. And obviously that can't be done for all projects. Some projects have to be quite tight. But you make it open ended, because then if people can get excited about making something and get excited about learning, and mine's going to be different to yours because, and mine's going to be better than yours because, or that's when people actually start learning. And actually, I I panicked that this might sound like a bit of a cop out, but now it's literally my default setting. If someone asks me how to do something I don't know, I'll just say I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we can sit and learn together for like 5 minutes, or you can show me how to do it in half an hour. And I have students, and this is a FE, so like further education, so we're talking college age, so we're talking like 16, 17, students who know specific things in Unreal way better than I do. Like realistically, I could go away and learn in the same amount of time they did, so I could sit down for a few hours and learn how to do like 3D animation. But as I don't know how to do 3D animation, I'll point them in the right direction, show them some keywords, look into root motion, look into this. There's probably a YouTube tutorial on this channel. But then apart from that, they want to learn it. The people online can teach it better than I can teach it because I don't know what I'm doing. But then it's sort of this back and forth, and it's sort of as a lecturer or just as a person, brings you more down to like sort of their level. Not, I don't mean that in like a patronizing way. It's like they literally know things better than I do. So now instead of like me telling them something, it's us having a conversation about something, and it's much more interesting for everyone.
So something that I know it's a nightmare of many lecturers, maybe teachers more than lecturers, is when like as students ask you something you don't know. And I know that, I remember I was doing this when I was a kid myself. I was trying to get tricky questions to put them on the spot to see them on a difficult moment. And I really enjoy that now, because if a student asks me a
Yeah.
question that is very interesting enough, and that I don't know it, I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't thought about that. Of course, if it's something you're presenting and you're doing it wrong, that's embarrassing and you shouldn't have prepared it better. But if it's like, oh, what about these? And I'm like, I never thought about that. That's really clever. That's a really good question.
So obviously I won't say the name because that'd be breaking loads of crazy rules. But when you said that Pesky Fox had commented, I know who that is, and they have specifically taught me something that I have used recently. So they were making an inventory system, and I said, oh, you can do it with sort of these integers and arrays and this and this. And they basically just said, no, I've got a better way of doing it. So they were using a dictionary to like look stuff up. And then I sort of roughly knew what a dictionary was, had never actually used one before, so had never been like that hands-on. And then they showed me how they were doing it. It made loads of sense for their situation. And then a few months later, when I sort of had that same situation, it was like, oh, I don't remember exactly how to use that, but let's look to see if a dictionary is better than like an array or a lookup table. So then, like, I went to Google, searched for it. It was loads better, made more sense. So sort of there you go. And I would much rather be like the honest guy who puts up his hands and says, I don't know, but we can learn together. And instead of just trying to bullshit, because the second someone smells bullshit, you can't teach them anymore. You've lost the whole class.
I think so. I think that there needs to be respect, needs to go two ways, both in the boundaries of what you know and what you don't know. I think that if you pretend to know more than you do, they will see through that. In the same way I see through them when they cheat, they will see through us. So we are doing an exam every day, I guess. So we've been examining every day. So there's a comment saying Sebastian Lake has helped a lot of students more than he'll ever know with his tutorials. I've had the pleasure of meeting Sebastian a couple of years ago. He was exceptionally humble person, and I'm sure he realizes how many people he has helped. He has, not because of his big following, but because I know how many people. I'm sure that there are hundreds of people writing in messages every time. And I've been lucky enough to have my own tutorials doing really well online, both on Patreon and on my website. I get a lot of messages from from people that have used my code. Virtually on a daily basis, I get 1 or 2 messages. So I'm sure it gets probably 5 times as more as I do, and I hope it does, because to be honest, despite that, it's not the money what drives me. Otherwise, I would be working in finance, right? But knowing,
Yeah.
no, and I think that's true for most games developers that keeps doing this. They keep maybe starving, but a lot of them it's because they keep wanting to do this, and otherwise they could get other jobs. But I think knowing that there are so many people that have made games because I decided to write a post that helped them getting started, it's a massive privilege for me. It's not something where I have pride. It's something that I think it's a great privilege that I was in that position. Yeah, you want to?
Saying that, actually, I made a prototype based off of one of your posts. Um,
Where's my
so
money?
it never came to anything. It was a little, it was sort of like, oh god, what's that Devolver game where you have the cards and you swipe them?
The
Phone game.
Reigns.
Reigns, yeah. So it was similar to Reigns, and that's sort of why I stopped it, because I didn't feel like I could do anything more interesting with it. But it was basically Reigns with the confession booth. So you went into a confession booth and started talking to someone. But the thing what started off was, I thought, well, if I can do some cute characters for this, that'll be funny, because it's like a quite serious confession, but it'll be funny because they're cute. And you had a blog post about the Baba is You shader, sort of the thing that has the UV map where stuff jumps around.
So I want money.
Yeah, do you know? Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So that shader, I mean, you were teaching how to do it in some backwards Unity program. I just remade it in Unreal, going off your logic. But yeah, it was really cool. So I've definitely used them as well.
It's really nice. I think I mentioned this before, but I have very mixed feelings about about the online tutorials thing. Of course, I love it and I keep doing it. Even I was doing it for free. I was doing it for free originally, so it's something I definitely have a big passion for. But the problem is that if I had made assets instead of tutorials, I probably would have 5 times the money I have now, because people will buy each asset individually. Maybe, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Also,
okay, so you're right, and maybe you should have done that. But sort of me stroking your ego a tiny bit. Do you buy many asset packs?
I don't buy assets.
Okay, yeah. So I've got a load of asset packs, mostly for prototyping stuff. I've never put out a game with assets in. I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that, as long as it's not just a proper flip. If they sort of make sense and they're hidden away and it's like a very small part, then I can understand why. But like I say, I have loads of asset packs. I've spent a lot of money on asset packs, and not a single thing has been used in a game.
But what really
you have done stuff which has helped people actually make new stuff in games. An asset pack makes people make, I don't know. Like I say, asset pack can be used for when asset packs are more frequently used, when you're talking about the really popular ones like a set of characters and a set of trees. The only time I ever actually see them come up is when people are making fun of the game dev because they've just done an asset flip.
Yeah, because they reuse the same. Yeah, totally. So, to be honest, I'm not massively interested in making money. I think that it's a good reward, of course, and it's a easy.
Sounds like you are.
Yeah, and it's an easy metric. It's an easy metric of success. Maybe not. It's a proxy. It's a proxy of success. Not the best one, but there's definitely a connection. At least for that you can keep doing this. For me, what really upsets me, and maybe that's my ego, I don't know, it's that if I had made assets, people would credit those assets most likely, while people learning from my tutorials, maybe they even reuse something as it is with tiny changes. They don't feel the need to acknowledge it because they've learned it themselves. Now it's theirs because they've learned it, they reused it, and they made it theirs.
So That's really interesting, actually. And so there's something what's really interesting about that is that um, I was thinking like for Loco the other day, I've been making the menus up. So the Loco Unity build, I was working with uh, like day to day, it was working with two people, and we had about three other freelancers doing things like concept art and logo design and stuff. And I was thinking, well, how do I want to like put this in the credits? Because obviously those people all need to be credited. But if their work's not in the final game, if it is literally just like say me at the top, and then have like something like heading like Unity build or Unity prototype, whatever, and have everyone listed. And then obviously you sort of have a thanks, and that would be where people put like my wife and this and that. And I feel
My
like I've learnt
cat.
loads from. Oh yeah, exactly. Like my dog would definitely get mentioned. But I feel like I've learnt loads from Game Maker's Toolkit. So that's the kind of thing where I would say, you know what, I feel like I've learnt tons, which has been put into this game. I'm going to thank Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit. But you're right. I would never think to actually write in there thank you for the people who have made the tutorials, which I follow on a daily basis, which just sounds ridiculous. But there are two or three YouTubers. I can't pronounce pretty much any of the company names, so I'm not going to pretend to say it now, and I won't bother typing away on my keyboard to look them up. But I might share them on my Twitter later. But there are a few tutorials on YouTube which I love, and I would never think about putting them in my credits. So I definitely will now that you've said that.
And I don't know. Maybe we're seeing it wrong. Maybe that's a metric. Maybe that's success because we succeeded in transferring skills, and they think it's their knowledge now. So maybe if they don't do it, it's because they feel they've integrated into themselves. So maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it means that we've done a good job, or maybe they're just assholes. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I
I'm
see.
kidding.
Oh,
Of course.
he's not. He's not. So yeah. So I think when it comes to like my metric, so what would make Loco a success? I think yeah, it's not monetary at all for me. Like when you were saying about hobbies, sort of things you probably do and not get money for. At this point, if that was the definition, I'd say Loco is definitely a hobby. Um, the thing I
It's an
want to do,
obsession.
yeah, it's sort of like my Citizen Kane getting involved. No, I was sort of just debating on whether I should sort of say the company because it seems a bit silly. But I am going to because it's the truth and it's how I feel. When it comes to me seeing if Loco is a success, it would be in some way, shape, or form to be able to work with Devolver, even if it's not a publishing deal, even if it's literally like sharing some booth space or something like that with them. Because I've known those guys for my entire career. In fact, actually, one of the head guys over at Devolver was in my Mastertronic pitch when I pitched Dream. He was there, which I would probably consider like my first day of business. Um, and I've always wanted to work with them and been to E3 with them, stayed in the mansion with them. Love all of their games. And I think one of the reasons for that is, one of the reasons I see that as success is that I guess I just want like sort of validation from my peers, and I feel like their catalogue of developers, all the ones I've met are fantastic people and they've made fantastic games, and then Devolver themselves are fantastic people who make fantastic pieces of artwork. So I guess it's more, yeah, just the validation to be able to like show alongside them or even be with them. That is what I would want, but they passed on the Unity version of Loco, so that's why I don't think there's any chance for the Unreal version. But I think that's what I see success as is literally working with great people and great artists, and then in my book that's Devolver.
So Devolver, if you're watching, Loco has to happen. So, so I think
No,
people.
see that's sort of that's why I was debating on whether it's literally like saying their name, because even though that is literally like all I think about, that's the thing. One, they probably think that's dumb, so it might put me back a few steps. But then also, it's such like a personal thing that should not be anyone else's goal. That is just like a thing in my head. Everyone else should be more focused on, personal goals, not should like the in quotes coolest publisher publish their game. It's more because I know them on a personal level and I respect them so much that I just want them to enjoy the thing that I've made as a peer.
I think that that's really great. And to be honest, I haven't been as excited about a prototype in a long time. And I mentioned it when we were talking yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't remember, during the sort of setting up, that I had a few people show me the prototypes for the show and things they, even people that have not joined or they will join. And I was like, oh, that's a nice prototype, really cool. When you show me Loco, I was like, oh my god, why didn't I know about that? But maybe it's just
Yeah,
because
well,
it works really well for me.
yeah, like no, yeah, like I think that's one of those things is that again, this is not a big conversation, so I won't. But one of the issues was that I was so focused on getting money and publisher support so I could carry on making the game. I never really felt like I was making the game. Like the other guys were actually doing all of the legwork. I was sort of that ideas man, saying like this would be cool, that would be cool, do this, prototype this. And I think the one thing I did was the camera, but basically everything else was done by them, and I was doing paperwork and PowerPoints. When actually, if I spent all of that time making the game better, publishers would probably think, "Wow, this is a great game." So yeah, it's one of those things where now I could not care less about how I'm perceived in a lot of like PowerPoints and stuff. My default sky is not blue anymore, so now I just want to focus on the game. I don't care about presentation. I want people to enjoy playing it. I don't want a great business document or a pitch deck or anything like that. It's just
We
all games
actually
and
had
games.
the PowerPoint presentation for Loco on screen now. I'm just
Okay,
I'm just
so
going
so you
through
could
quickly through it.
yeah. So that at the time I haven't got it in front of me. I can't sort of see the slides. At the time, I thought that was a really cool PowerPoint. I had some sort of friends help me for Gary Lloyd actually gave me loads of great advice because he does a lot of this kind of stuff. On sort of after the final slide, having I think he called them safety slides. I'm going to call them safety slides. So obviously you don't want this pitch to be going on forever, but to show that you're prepped and to show that you're prepared, and maybe add some more like data or graphs or information. After your final slide, you could have like loads of other slides. So then if someone says, have you thought about this? Have you looked at that market? What about Twitch integration? Then you can say, actually, I've got some information on that, and then jump to these slides. So I feel like we had some great concept art in there. We've got some sort of, I think we've got GIFs. I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, it's full
Sort of,
of
so
gifts.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. So along that side, there we had the game to sort of play and for people to see. Um, but that's what I mean. I felt like I did a good job with it. I obviously am not seeing it now, and other people might think that this looks terrible. But 3, 4 years ago, I thought, it's a cool build. That's a great project. That's a great PowerPoint. I've worked really hard on this. I've practiced this. Going out to E3 with them, it's a done deal. And because I was staying with them, I knew like their past devs are sort of were saying like, oh well, you wouldn't be staying with them if it wasn't a done deal. So then I sort of would just double down on practicing for this pitch and doing this pitch and getting everything ready. When actually all that was wasted. I should have just made a really cool game. That no one cares. Like to be honest, if someone in the street came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, I've got a really cool idea for a game. Do you want to see it?" I wouldn't expect them to show me a PowerPoint. I'd expect them to show me a game. So it's like if I get that for funding and for events and stuff, people ask you to jump through hoops and fill out forms and do questions do questionnaires, send screenshots and gifs and all this kind of stuff. So there is a place that you have to do it. I'm not saying like flat out reviews, but I spent way too long on it. Make good games and people will want them. Like that. That's the rule at the end of the day.
I think it's all very valuable stuff. And I mean, you say that in a way failed, but I'm sure that the experience you got from the game probably will help, even if not local, will probably help future project. And I think that that's why in a way maybe this single project is a failure, but maybe overall it makes your career a success because of that experience.
100%. I think it's one of those things where people, mainly teenagers, I want to say, sort of stereotyping a bit, but people say like, "Oh, I'm so thankful for my mistakes because I wouldn't be here without them." I've always thought that was so cliched and it's just people basically trying to pretend that they're happy after like
Fucking it
mistakes have
up.
happened. But I completely agree with it now. It's one of those things where it's just changed me. Like again, because we haven't been able to get into it, I don't think I properly hammered it home enough. When Loco failed, just it was as if my whole life came crashing down around me. It was the worst thing ever, and I literally wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Um, but it's not just like, oh, your game failed, like, get a grip. There it's just, yeah, it was rough. Um, but then all those things are relative. Like it was rough to me, and my whole life seemed pointless. Um, but then, yeah, the last, let's say, 2 3 years, learning from this, being confident enough now to see where I've gone wrong, understand it, talk about it, working like big groups of people, with whether it's a game jam, whether it's a teaching team, whether it's students, being able to like talk to devs and have time to prototype stuff, not worry so much about money because obviously these games aren't necessarily my income anymore, so I can just do like really dumb shit like that comedy game where you're just like three monkeys falling over. Like, yeah, I've grown so much and I'm much happier now than I was before. I know so much more now. Yeah, it's one of those things where I arguably wish it didn't happen, but then it's like that whole timeline thing. I literally wouldn't know what I would look like now if it had happened. So I'm just happy where I am.
I think like for me the sort of catchphrase is that if if you can learn from from a mistake, it's an experience. It's not a mistake. If you keep doing it over and over again, that probably is a
Yeah, then
mistake.
it's a mistake. Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think
So that,
I think
go on.
we've almost reaching 2 hours. I promise it was 1 hour, but I can see that we still have a lot of people watching. So I feel really bad. If I can chat, I could go on forever. But there's another question that I actually want to ask you. So I know that you've been working on something that is not a game, but it's a very cool project. It might help few game to get started. You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So around where I live, like I say, the closest sort of like big towns, basically a city, is Ipswich, and they have a great company and school system there called Creative Computing Club. And what Creative Computing Club is really aimed to do is target, or sorry, work with under 16s to deliver ICT GCSEs, but not just like IT. They do robotics and like really in depth, like sort of white hat hacking and all this kind of stuff. It's a fantastic organisation, run by Matthew Applegate, who actually won the games. What is it? The Gaming Teachers BAFTA. But anyway, so Creative Computing Club is a fantastic organisation, and they have a monthly meetup for games developers in the area, and that's for any age, students, 50, 60, 100-year-olds, sort of everyone, just hobbyists, everyone's welcome. And so what Matt has been able to organise, and now I'm sort of running it, or is sort of going to really start in the next month or so, is an incubator space for game developers to be able to develop games and have a lot of industry input. So it was always planned to be an actual physical incubator, and that does exist, but obviously we're not going to be using it at the minute. Um, so there's actually a workspace for people to go, and if people are having these meetings with publishers, they can go there and have their setup and do everything professionally and properly. But for the first month, we're going to have industry feedback and industry game devs, and it's going to be quite intensive to make prototypes and make games. But you can do it alongside a job. When I say intense, I just mean we're going to be having a lot of phone calls and developing. It's going to be very creative. And then the second month is going to be focused at business planning. But like I said, there'll be a bit of pitching and a bit of this and that in there. But a lot of it will be, okay, if you want to be an indie developer and if you want to make a game and run a business, how would you do your taxes? How would you pay people? How would you do this? How would
I
you do
wish
that?
I knew
But it's sort of all
that.
so do I. So it's sort of all that boilerplatey type stuff. Um, so then those first 2 months are really like, okay, let's start big and let's get this stuff. You've got industry experience there, you've got business experience there, and then really me and some other staff members would sort of coach you and drop in and make sure you're doing prototypes and playtesting for a year. And then at the end of that, and probably a little bit in between, we'll be going to events and showing games. The plan was always to do EGX. Obviously, the whole landscape of game shows may be different in a year's time, so all of that stuff we'll sort of learn while we're going. But yeah, the whole thing will be a year-long incubator where people will be able to come get help making games, work with loads of different artists and business people, and that's something that I'm really proud to be a part of, because in Suffolk and actually in just East Anglia, this area of the country, it's just void of games and game design. So to sort of be able to do something in my home area and try and bring games out here for opportunities for people which I didn't have growing up, then yeah, that'd be fantastic. But also, it's very selfish because I just want some people to hang out with and talk about games with. So I need to build that in this area.
I think it's a good way of being selfish if that's the if that's the outcome. Now, I honestly think it's really good because I think it not only shows that you have in a way succeeded in a career as a lecturer, but also you're still willing to help games to get funded. And actually, for a short amount of time, I was looking into starting an incubator myself, but then tax stuff, I was like, no, it's too much effort. And it's still a dream of mine being able to maybe do something like that in Italy, where the indie scene is rising, but it's not as explosive as it is here in London, as it was here in London.
Well, what I would love to do, and it's actually sort of where this incubator idea started, but it wasn't feasible. That's why we spread over a year. I would love to be able to do something like Stugan.
I was pitching it as the Italian Stugan.
Okay, yeah. So originally I pitched this as the English Stugan, but then obviously it sort of formed into what it is. Yeah.
So I think that now Stugan is a proper term for that. But I mean, I think they've been the first one to sort of, maybe not the first one, but I think the first one to do it publicly like that. So I think they deserve to get in a way that the sort of credits. Now we're reaching very close to 2 hours, and I think that we can probably start wrapping this up.
Yeah.
But before that, there's one final question that I want to ask you. How many versions of Unity do you have installed on your machine?
So on this machine now, the thing is, I would like to say that I had completely eradicated it because I don't like having it on here. But I would hazard a guess that I have probably got about 8 versions. And the thing is, what makes it even sadder, say I've got about 8 versions on here, and that's trying to delete them all, and I still reckon there's probably that much lurking on here. Like none of them are in the Unity Hub. I feel like if I go onto Unity Hub now, there'll probably be one in there, and then the rest will just be like in different drives and just hiding, hoping that I don't find them.
I feel the pain.
And I think, to be fair, I think they're all nicely in the Epic launcher, but I think, to be fair, I probably have about 4 or 5 versions of Unreal as well. But I don't need those. I can literally get rid of those at a mouse click. I just haven't bothered. But yeah.
Maybe that's another question I should ask people that next time. How many versions of Unreal do they have? I guess. But
now that you've asked me, I don't know how many game makers I have. I've probably got 3 or 4 game makers as well.
Do you even have space for assets anymore?
Oh man! But the worst thing being a game dev is opening up Photoshop and it says your scratch drive is full. Oh man, so horrible.
It's a feeling I know very well with Premiere, unfortunately. So I know I'm doing a lot of video editing now because of this kind of stuff. So I know very well what you're talking about. Now, let me really thank you so much for such a nice talk. Usually I try to keep it in an hour, but if the conversation goes on and people are watching, and we actually have a lot of people still watching, and I'm always happy to keep doing. But I think at a certain point I have to release you and I have to eat as well. But really,
no, that's all cool.
Thank you so much for the nice chat. And I know that there are a lot of other things that we talk about that we didn't have a chance to cover. So maybe in the future we can have another chat. Maybe showing LOCO. I don't know. I'm not just
no, actually, let's. off air, I guess. We can pencil in a time where I've got some good loco stuff to share, and then we can finally go through which this conversation was meant to be about, and that's the failure and then rebirth of loco.
I would love to have an episode just on that. So with that,
Like this one was meant to be.
with
Cool.
I'm happy as it is. Don't worry. With that being said, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. It was really nice, and hopefully we will have you. We will have again. So thank you so much again.
Thanks.
Now, with that being said, I know these episodes have been running a bit longer than expected, but I want to just introduce you the guest that we're going to have next week. It's going to be Harry Alizavakis. And you might not recognize him from his picture. I didn't, because he's not, it's a bit shy online, let's go with that. But you will probably recognize him from his avatar. He's a game developer and a very talented shader master. He has done a lot of tutorials under the sort of my take on shaders, where we do is redoing shaders from that he has seen around, and he does a weekly technically art post that I'm obsessed with. I'm really obsessed about that. But basically, it's just a collection of cool shader stuff that that he has found online, and it's all what it's needed to fuel my anxiety and my imposter syndrome. So as much as I love it, I'm glad it only comes out once, basically once a week, because I don't think my heart could could see so much other shady goodness that I don't know how to do for that long. Now, with that being said, again, I really want to thank you, first of all of you, for being here tonight. I see a lot of comments. Unfortunately, there were a lot of questions and a lot of messages I didn't have a chance to read. But when the conversation flows, I try not to interrupt. And I'm Italian; it's really hard for me for me to hold back and not do that. But really, thank you so much to all the people that have joined us tonight, and hopefully will join again. If you like what I'm doing, if you like the show, if you like the tutorials, pay us. Pay the creators you love. No, I'm kidding, but really, supporting creators that you like, or that they create content you like, is the best way to help them keep doing it. Especially right now, in a time when there is so much uncertainty, supporting those creators is a great way to make sure that they can keep creating those content. And I think that specifically around this time, if you have the chance, please support underrepresented creators. Please support Black creators that might do not have the same chances that I have had to grow my Patreon. So, I usually say support me, and I will keep saying, but specifically in this time, if you have a chance, support someone that really needs it. I have, as you can see, I have a lot of Patreon. I'm always happy to have more. It always helps. But there are a lot of more creators that are struggling, and I think that they might deserve support. They might need support much more than I do. So maybe just for this time, support someone else. I'm kidding, of course, but I think it's true. Please support the people that they really need. Now, with that being said, there's another small announcement I want to make. If you follow me on Patreon, you might know that I started working on video content more and more regularly. These, of course, it's one way in which I'm doing it, but I'm also working on doing long video essays, because now they're very popular and I enjoy so many of them. And I'm sort of trying to get into the way of AI in games in a way by doing something similar. So I'm working on a really big, really long video essay about creatures. If you know me, you know that Creature has been a game that has literally changed not just my career, but my life. So it's a project I'm really excited to work on. I will talk about the AI of Creature really in details. So if that's something you're interested on, if you really want to know how a game from 1996 managed to be the most advanced life simulation we ever had on in a game, then keep watching and please consider subscribing, because It will hopefully in the next few weeks. I don't want to say a date because you never know. In the next few weeks, it will be released. Now, with that being said, I really want to thank you again, and hopefully you will join me and Harry next week. It's a weekly show, so it's next Wednesday at 7 p.m. BST. With that being said, I hope wherever you are, whether it's day or night, I hope you're safe, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.